the former heavyweight champion of the world, Joe Louis.
Bob Ward. Here we go. All right, thank you, Bob. Sit down here, Joe, in our ring, as you have so many times in your career, waiting for the bell to then just shuffling out, stalking your prey. Let's go back to May 13th, your birthday.
Joe Louis was born in 1914 in Chambers County, Alabama. My father came from very underprivileged beginnings.
120 acres of poor land rented by your father and mother. How many of you children were there, Joe? 8.
He was the youngest sibling from a large family growing up in Alabama.
At just 12 years old, Joe Louis left the cotton fields of Alabama during the Great Migration, a time when millions of black families moved north seeking opportunity. They were drawn by Detroit's thriving auto industry and the promise of a better life. And early on, Joe knew that his physical gifts could change his future.
There weren't many avenues for poor black kids fresh up from the South. Boxing offered a unique and extremely lucrative option for blacks.
We had segregation in football and baseball that caused black players to form their own leagues, the Negro Leagues. It wasn't so clear-cut in boxing.
Boxing was one of the few sports where black and white athletes could compete against one another. For black fighters, opportunities were scarce, yet the ring could still put money in their pocket. So Joe Louis saw boxing as a path to fame and fortune.
I'm satisfied you're going to be the next heavyweight champion of the world. I hope so.
In the spring of 1932, when he was 18 years old, Louis fought in his first amateur match. It's really important to realize the opportunity that boxing held to a kid like Joe Louis in Detroit. If he starts winning fights, there's actual money in that.
The intercity Golden Gloves, with top amateurs mixing it up.
Joe Louis wound up fighting 54 amateur fights. He won 50 of them, 43 by knockout. When he would win, he would receive what they call merchandise checks, and he would use that to help put food on the table for his family. Boxing was able to help sustain him as he started to show promise, and he eventually caught the attention of a man named John Roxborough and his friend Julian Black.
Julian Black is the other half of the managing partnership that discovered Joe Louis had the makings of a champion.
They saw this kid with all this raw potential and talent.
In all their years in managing boxers, they had never seen a young man with such natural knockout power in his right hand. With every knockout by Joe Louis, they saw dollar signs.
And here's another important fellow, Joe's trainer, Jack Blackburn, who's developed the champ into a cool, calm, powerful engine of destruction.
Those 3 men
Decided they were going to take him to the professional rankings in 1934.
As Joe Louis turned pro, his path towards the heavyweight crown set him on a collision course with Max Schmeling, who was pursuing the same dream.
Max Schmeling was a young teenager during the First World War. His main experience of the war would have been hunger. In the post-war, there was close to a famine. There was awful hyperinflation. There was the effects of political turbulence. And about 1.7 million Germans were killed in action. Every German family was touched by loss and by grief.
Adolf Hitler, a maniac of ferocious genius.
Adolf Hitler famously talks about boxing in Mein Kampf.
The gospel according to Hitler. I quote, "What is denied to us, the German fist must take."
He talks about self-confidence of a Germany that was beaten in World War I and now needs to pick itself up.
For Hitler, boxing was a very good image of Aryan supremacy and especially physicality in a way that he thought could convey an image of a Germany that is a place of power and prestige in the world.
Then Joe Louis came along.
Joe Louis!
Word had filtered through the country that there was this extraordinary black fighter.
20 years old and only 7 months out of the Golden Gloves.
Joe Louis had an amazing combination of strength and speed. And he could dominate anyone in the ring.
Louis sends him down.
And it's all over.
This right hand, when that connected, it was the kiss of death.
Most heavyweights don't have the technical skill and physical ability the way Lewis did. He was the first heavyweight who could do what lightweights and welterweights did in terms of mixing their punches and demonstrating all the facets of a boxing craft.
Experts have raved over the marvelous accuracy with which Joe throws his punches.
Lewis was, in effect, the first modern heavyweight.
In boxing at that time, to be a title contender, to challenge for the heavyweight world title, black men had to be twice as good as the white man. So Joe Louis had to prove everything with his two hands in the boxing ring.
And what now, Joe? Well, I guess whoever they pick for me. Well, Joe, you're willing to fight any of them, aren't you? Right.
Joe Louis was trying to become the first black to win the heavyweight championship in over 20 years. There was immense pressure on his shoulders.
Joe Louis's managers were very smart and savvy in knowing that they had to create a public image of him that was a complete contrast to what Jack Johnson had to offer.
They came up with this set of rules that, he has to always be humble and he can never gloat after beating an opponent, and most importantly, never be seen with a white woman. Joe Louis had to come in and sort of undo some of these notions, whether that's fair or not.
Joe Louis had to follow the script, win over promoters, get bigger fights, and keep rising to the next step. New York City, boxing's biggest stage.
To assure that he was going to get a chance of fighting for the title, he found himself a savvy promoter, Mike Jacobs, who could get him a fight in New York.
Here comes a black man who is willing to play by the white man's rules, and who also, by the way, packs a pretty powerful punch.
Louis accepted kind of crafting of his image. At the same time, Hitler is using Max Schmeling as a symbol of Aryan supremacy, and these two will come to represent their nation.
Schmeling beats Louis by knockout in 1936, and that only accelerates Hitler's devotion to the idea that he is the representative of the master race.
The giant Zeppelin Hindenburg, after battling with the Atlantic weather, landed at Frankfurt to bring Max Schmeling safely home.
Schmeling came back on the Hindenburg. Pretty glorious way to travel across the Atlantic.
This was the ultimate in luxury travel. To give you an idea, a ticket on the Hindenburg for a German would cost 1,000 Reichsmarks. That's about the equivalent of $10,000 today. And so for Schmeling to be flying back on the Hindenburg, this indicates just what a kind of level of celebrity he's reached.
Für das Ansehen des deutschen Volkes in Amerika.
That crowd that lines the route from the flying field to the town seems to be trying to make even more noise than the New York crowd did.
There's documentary film of him arriving in Germany, being greeted by rapturous crowds. Of course, this was a propaganda triumph.
Max, what was the punch with which you knocked out Joe Louis?
You want me to show you?
Yes, try it. Oh boy, that's great.
The fight against Joe Louis in 1936, no one in Germany got to see the fight. They could only hear the radio broadcast. But there were the fight films. Goebbels, the propaganda minister, was even more excited, and he decreed that films of the fight be shown all over Germany. And at one time, there were 17 different theaters in Berlin that were showing the film at the same time.
Hitler was ecstatic. He invited Schmeling and his wife to his home. And Max Schmeling brought with him the unedited films of the fight, and they watched that together. Hitler was completely enthusiastic, and he clapped his knees, and he was very happy. He apparently said that, quote, "The last round is quite wonderful. He really knocks out the Negro," unquote. Hitler was so enthusiastic because Max Schmeling, for him at least, symbolized German Aryan strength, right, for defeating a black boxer in the United States.
In September of 1937, Louis agreed to the rematch against Schmeling, giving Max his chance at reclaiming the heavyweight title that he lost 6 years earlier.
I see no reason why Schmeling thinks that he should regain his title. I will take care of him on night June the 22nd.
1938, New York. Heavyweight champion Joe Louis meets Max Schmeling of Germany for the second time.
There was enormous pressure on both fighters in 1938 that had not existed in 1936. And it surely tested their inner fiber as human beings.
You ready, Joe?
They realized the stakes and difference in the identities that they were going to carry into the ring.
As millions around the world became transfixed by the symbolic implications, Hitler demanded his radio to be in perfect working order. And on the eve of war, Hitler's eagerness for the opening bell was matched by his adversary across the Atlantic, Franklin Roosevelt.
So only a few days before the fight, Franklin Roosevelt met with Joe Louis at the White House. He was already envisioning a war with Germany. It was apparent to him the symbolic significance of this fight.
Yankee Stadium, New York. A huge crowd of 85,000.
100 million people around the world are listening to it on the radio. It's the clash of two titans. It's America versus Germany. It's FDR versus Hitler. Democracy versus Nazism.
A fight you will never forget.
The reception that Schmeling faced as he walked out of his locker room was far different from 1936. During his ring walk, Schmeling was not greeted favorably at all. The audience pelted him with cigarette butts, paper cups, banana peels, pretty much anything that they could find. They had to drape a towel over Schmeling's head in order to protect him from all of this debris.
The Brown Bomber is out to fight the battle of his life. And here we go in round one.
Everything about that round is a graphic message to Hitler. The thunder of the body shots, the vicious beating to the ribcage that Louis was delivering. You could hear them on the radio.
Man alive, he almost tore Schmeling's head off.
As Louis cranked up the attack with vicious body shots, you could hear Schmeling squeal.
There's a towel thrown in from his corner. It's all over. In just 1 minute and 39 seconds, Joe Louis has flattened his most formidable foe.
Schmeling crumbles to the canvas.
He's taken the worst beating in the shortest time in all ring history. And so Joe Louis proves his right to wear the heavyweight crown. Proves his right to be rated with the greatest champions of all time.
When Joe Louis beats Max Schmeling, it is obviously seen as this win for democracy. But it's so much more than that. It's really a win for Black Americans, because Joe Louis was the first Black person to be seen as an American hero and not just a Black American hero.